You don't understand how many times I've just been told, oh, you haven't found the right man.
So, what is a lesbian anyways? The social, scientific and political history of debates aiming to define a lesbian in itself shows why our identity is so important. It's been something discussed for hundreds of years. Now, we get to decide for ourselves what the word means to us. To me, a lesbian is me. To other lesbians, a lesbian is them. A lesbian body, a lesbian mind, a lesbian soul is one born of love. It doesn't have to be romantic or sexual love. It is whatever it is on a case-by-case basis. It is a beautiful thing.
I can't imagine long-term dating a man or doing anything with a man.
I knew that I was into women when I was pretty young, and some of my first experiences were with women anyway, but especially in the surroundings that I was brought up in, and just kind of, I guess, the expectations of society that are kind of brought onto you, especially being very feminine, being very comfortable in that, and not kind of going out of some of those norms. I just, it took me a while to realize that I was a lesbian.
I've kissed a man once and I fucking hated it. I hated every second of it.
I knew that I liked women when I was 12. I was just chilling in my room, thinking about life and being like, wow, I like looking at women kissing. Oh, that's what that means. And it was kind of an easy realization. But it took me a while to realize I was a lesbian. I realized when I was 18.
Lesbian identity and community are things that have been hard sought after. In a world that makes us feel so other, being able to have confidence in yourself and community in others is crucial. Identity doesn't need to be scientifically justified. It is a blessing to be able to build a space for oneself and others where you can say, I am a lesbian, and feel safe in all that means. Self-expression has always been important to queer communities. Particularly in the last 100 years, we've seen aesthetics and subcultures be appointed as lesbian. Whether you're femme or butch, dressed like a pink pom-pom or a lumberjack, there are signifiers to say to other lesbians, hey, I see you, and to the rest of the world, hey, you're going to be forced to see me. The body is radical. It can speak for us in a way stronger than words sometimes. The freedom and willingness to appear how we want shows a desire to fight for a freedom to act and say what we want as well.
Well, I used to look a lot different before I came out as queer. I used to have pin straight, waist-length blonde hair, and I used to dress basically like a chav. I now dress very much like a lesbian, I think is the way I would describe it. Very gay. I definitely dress like a butch. I think I'm masc, not butch. But I'm gender fluid, so, that changes.
I find so much joy in self-expression in whatever I do, whether it's getting tattoos or doing my makeup or dressing in a certain way. And also self-expression, apart from making it easier for me to exist as myself, is another great way to find like-minded people, whether they're queer or not, but just kind of, understanding that you look cool. Yeah. Maybe there's something going on.
I've dressed masculinely and had short hair since I was 14. This is what I'm doing with the femininity is a performance. This is not necessarily a costume, but as if I was my own doll that I was putting clothes onto and not like a genuine feminine femme.
I have always been very particular about my hair. Even though I am masc, I prefer having longer hair, just because to me longer hair you can be more androgynous with. Straight girls get wolf cuts. A wolf cut is now no longer a indication of queerness to me. I think a lot of extreme haircuts I associate with queerness, things like mohawks and mullets, and not for men, but if a woman has a mullet or a gender non-conforming person has a mullet, I'm like, that's a queer person. Colours come into it a lot, what colour you're dyeing your hair and how intricate is it, and how have you done it yourself, did you go to a salon? Those all come into it for me, because I think hair is one of the things you notice first when you look at someone. like how it frames their face, what haircut they have, what color it is.
I was like, yeah, that's kind of cute because it kind of like feels like, you know, my hair is natural and like I'm coming into myself as like who I really am. And so that kind of is a nice parallel.
It's something in the way that the hair looks. Maybe it's a little messier. Maybe it's a little like they did it themselves. Sometimes you're like, oh, no straight woman would have like a micro bang with like a tiny mullet and 2 rat tails, and it's bleach blonde, like white bleach blonde.
The urge to have some mullet or whatever you see other gays with it in the wild, and you're like, oh my gosh, I want that. You know what she's having, like the idea of like having like a haircut or like looking certain way that like wouldn't be attractive to men as well.
I think the whole invention of haircuts that are like unconventional, like a skullet, where you shave like 90% of the hair on your head off and leave it, or things like rat tails and mohawks and like extreme haircuts, I think are 100% like a big middle finger to what is standard. And I think so is a lot of queerness.
A great compliment to give to check if somebody's gay is, hey, I like your hair.
I mean, I think a lot of men, unfortunately, view women as something that's for them in every sense of that word. So it doesn't really matter what you're doing. A lot of men, either way, are into queer women.
I like keeping it very short, and I've always had like super short hair. Sometimes even like brightly dyed hair, like it comes off as like so thin that like men find it bizarre. I think there's like a horseshoe.
The signifiers of femininity that I grew up with and kind of what is portrayed as beautiful and very feminine in a lot of ways, I feel kind of uncomfortable with myself having body hair because of that. But I understand that that's something that I have to work on, and that's something that's totally irrational. It doesn't make me any more feminine or less feminine or any more beautiful or less beautiful to have or not have body hair.
My sister, for example, and I love her, she accepts me partially. She's overall a great person and an ally, but she like really wants me to take off my arm hair, for example, and I love my arm hair. I love it. It's an accessory. Leg hair as well. I stopped waxing my legs. I started growing my eyebrows out like recently. I used to have like these thin little plucked ones because they need to look perfect. I stopped even shaving my mustache because I'm like, wait, it itches when I do it. I don't want to. I want to feel comfortable in my own body, and a part of that is keeping my body hair and not letting the shame that I once carried with it and attached to it when I was young, like teenager. I'm not letting it be a part of my life anymore.
I think that I'm more comfortable without my body hair, but I don't know where that exactly comes from. I can kind of dissect that mentally and know that, you know, majorly it does come from being socialized in that way. But again, it like just makes me feel more comfortable not to have body hair. But if those socializations were never there, I'm guessing, yeah, I wouldn't care if that wasn't something that ever was, you know, brought onto our minds. You would never invent a razor, you know?
Like clean, smooth dolphin lady. That is the standard. What? And I think it's the media, and I think it's the patriarchy, I think it's misogyny, just a mix of all of those things. My sister, love her to death, but that girl, she when she looks at my armpit hair, we can't talk for the next 3 minutes until I apologize for having it. And I'm not gonna do that. And I felt like kind of scared to be in there and for this like woman to like rip body hair off of me, and I'm like, this hurts, and she's like, girl, this is normal. It was definitely because of my mother. She put me there. She was like, you need to get rid of this shit. It felt kind of horrendous. Not even, I mean, obviously because of the pain, but also because of just kind of the invasiveness. I remember my mustache getting waxed. I remember like my eyebrows getting tweezed. All of it hurting so much every single time.
queer women tend to be non-conforming in a lot of ways, whether they're feminine or masculine, it's just kind of in different ways. So I would definitely assume that, but also from like personal experience, the people that I'm around, it really doesn't have to mean that they are. I have friends who are not queer and who don't care about having body hair anyway.
It's kind of weird how something that is already a part of all of us is now given this connotation of either a certain sexuality or like a lifestyle or even political stance.
I definitely do. I think about that a lot. Just kind of the ways I present myself in certain situations, and especially in like situations of power that have to do with men. I definitely do not want, I guess, my queer identity to be something that's very present because of that kind of fear that I have.
The consensus from these interviews that hair is viewed as potentially indicating sexuality is supported by the research of Brianne Faz, who conducted a study asking her students not to shave their body hair. Many reported that people close to them were concerned that they may be a lesbian, the horror, and some feared or were subjected to homophobic remarks or actions. One thing that a large amount of queer people link their identity to is fibre crafts. In a tumultuous and sometimes traumatic environment to live in as a queer person, fibre arts can be a huge breath of relief. Knitters self-report that knitting provides psychological benefits like feeling productive, having a creative outlet, and helping socially. After World War II, knitting was prescribed as a treatment for PTSD and was actually found to be effective. Betson Corkill and Jill Riley's research concludes knitting creates strong, resilient, flexible fabric. Therapeutic knitting seeks to create strong, resilient, flexible minds in the process. So it becomes easy to see why queer people would want to put their energy into something with such power to heal. You have recently tried knitting.
Yes, I have.
How would you rate that experience?
Like 1 through 10.
The 1 through 26.
1 through 26.
Yeah.
I would say a nice 24. It's I can see how therapeutic it is because it's a very like structured repeating thing. It's almost like a fidget toy, but you actually like make something at the end of it. To me, it's like a domestic thing that's become almost like a signaling.
Textile arts linked to queer culture is not a 21st century phenomenon. In 1985, Cleve Jones initiated the Names Project AIDS Memorial Quilt. This was an 120,000 square meter quilt made to memorialize the names of people that died from AIDS. Although not only queer people died from AIDS, it was largely considered a queer problem. We can already start to see an interlocking history between queer people and fibre arts. Sarah Joy Ford is a contemporary fibre artist that uses textiles to build upon and repair a lesbian narrative. With her needle that can pierce across time and space, bringing eras together, she uses and expands upon archives to develop lesbian and queer cultures today. For example, this quilt, Archives and Amazons, depicts the Amazon women from days long past that now are heralded as godlike figures in lesbian subculture. Her work finds that many historical sources of lesbianism in the arts are text instead of visual. With a lot of the visual sources that do exist, there are ethical problems with adapting them into our current idea of queer culture. For example, in the late 1900s, there was a wealth of lesbian paper publications to be shared purely within the community. These would oftentimes contain erotic imagery, with people from marginalized communities acting as models. As this was pre-internet, these people could not have any clue that their images would end up being publicly accessible to everyone with a screen. Therefore, a lot of this rich history is unable to be viewed online to keep these people safe and anonymous. But in this day and age, the internet is everything. Lesbians like me that would benefit immensely from being able to see the strength and community held in these publications would have a hard time gaining access to them, as they are only available to be viewed in person. That is why Sarah Joy Ford creates work that is inspired by these publications and other non-visual archives into quilts. People now can view her work and feel the warmth and beauty of its rich history, while also building on current culture. One thing she says she is very aware of in her practice is who lesbian arts and culture may exclude. It may seem strange, but historically lesbian movements have been known to be exclusionary. The phenomenon of lesbian separatism may sound utopian at first, but in reality it was not. The basic gist was a large group of lesbians got fed up of men and decided that they would start a life free of capitalism and patriarchy in a rural landscape. For a lot of people, this sounds like the dream. But then lesbians with sons, trans women, non-binary lesbians, and many other groups were excluded. The lesbians taking part in this movement were mostly white and middle class. Not everyone had the privilege of being able to leave their responsibilities behind, and many didn't want to. There was also a problem of the movement being closely tied to colonialism. Overall, it was far from perfect. There have been new ideas since then that provide similar senses of freedom, but where everyone can be free. The Combahee River Collective was a group made up of mostly minorities that aimed to make a specific space for all marginalised people, as opposed to just lesbians. This is something that lesbian separatism could never achieve. Flash forward to 2020. Lesbians are isolated and the world seems to be falling apart. Everyone is disconnected from each other and nature. Then enters a light. Cottagecore. This term generally refers to a lifestyle inspired by living simply in a cottage and being one with the land. It is a rejection of capitalism and patriarchy. So naturally, many lesbians flock to it, to connect to the natural and claim the natural as lesbian. One of the aims of cottagecore is to slow down and make things for yourself. For some people, this is farming or forestry, and for some, it's fibercraft. This could include knitting, crochet, sewing, needle felting, weaving, the list goes on. These are all activities that can be done in the comfort of one's home with no social pressure to go, 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 and you get an end product that makes you feel accomplished. In these moments, you are no longer a hamster in a wheel made to run to prove your worth to a billionaire.
Basically, mostly queer people. It definitely got me to quarantine and crochet. We only printed 70 flyers for the freshers fair. I had to keep sending them to the library. Being like, print 100 more. I think we shipped like 300 that day. We didn't even have time to cut them out. And then 80 people turned up to our first session. And keep in mind, Lily had just learned how to crochet, and I don't know how confident she got teaching, and Tom didn't know at all, I think, at that point. So, we were just, and, loads of people were there, oh, so you'll teach me. So I was just there, oh my gosh, he does! 40 people want me to teach them how to crochet, I don't know how I can do this. But, I'm also trying to eat my dinner at the same time. But we got through that. It was kind of a dry year. We did have quite a lot of retention. We had 80 people turn up to the first one. There was a more than 30 people, and then throughout the whole year it was just kind of the 10 little ones. But I don't know, the knit crochet in a circle is very much sometimes we refer to the society as Stitch and Bitch Reloaded or Stitch and Bitch 2, because the spirit is still there. People turn up and be oh, you'll never guess what my housemate has been doing, or oh my god, so guys, I broke up with him, it would be, and we would all know, we've gone things of courses, we never see each other out in society, but we all know the complexities. I think knitting just brings that out in people. But this year has been amazing, we again had I think 80 people again turn up to only 100. It was the biggest session we've ever had.
Cottagecore allows people to make lifestyle choices that benefit them from where they are right now, as opposed to lesbian separatism. It's more inclusive, more accessible, and has proven psychological and social benefits. This community of queer people that have developed because of fibercrafts, spearheaded by the cottagecore movement, could get a sense of relief. LJ Roberts is another lesbian fibre artist. They've had an activist practice since they saw the AIDS quilt as a teenager. One of their most famous pieces of work is titled The Queer Houses of Brooklyn in the Three Towns of Brooklyn, Boswick and Midwalt during the 41st year of the Stonewall era. Created in 2011, this textile collage map shows the locations of queer houses in New York, and henceforth the development, existence and determination of queer communities to carve out a place for themselves. As a developed artist who has been around the block, or blocks, seen in this work, Robert states that fibre arts are important to their practice because they, and it, are treated similarly. Even if you haven't been directly told it, there's a general knowledge that it seems that craft is not considered as sophisticated, as valued, or just as good as other art practices. This has only in recent years started to have a paradigm shift, much like outlooks on queer communities.
If I'd come out as a lesbian in secondary school, I would have definitely been a lot worse off.
In the situations where I've kind of showed my queerness in some way in public, I have experienced discrimination, I've been yelled at on the street, I've had like lots of experiences. I find it hard to be myself and express myself, but also kind of like signify that I am a lesbian and that I am queer, because that is a huge part of my identity anyway, and I would like to be within circles of people who are like-minded, and you know, obviously to have a community as well within that.
As a lesbian, I can empathise with and feel empathy from craft. We've both been deemed less because of our ties to femininity and rejection of problematic aspects of society, such as patriarchy and capitalism. And now, we can both rebel.
The more I'm in tune with my identity and the way I look, the less I'm apprehensive about showing it to others.
A lot of people, myself included, have a sense of guilt over relaxing. This is hopefully obviously unreasonable, but the world we are brought up in can draw this into us. One way fibre arts can help people break out is by almost tricking the brain into feeling productive. Knitting to me is enjoyable, but it does also feel like work. It requires thought, but not too much. It's a challenge, but I won't get financially punished if I mess up. At the end, I get the satisfaction of a job well done without having had to burn myself out in the process. Fibre arts are a way to reclaim time.
And I think there's no real pressure to like even like talk to people or like make eye contact or like do anything. And it feels so satisfying, like, you know, when you get like a really good groove on and you're just like, oh, so fabulous, like I'm so good. Like it feels so satisfying. Maybe the benefits are unlimited and everyone should be doing it.
Depression and anxiety are becoming increasingly common, in part due to the growing sense of helplessness in the world. Understanding how something is done and doing it for yourself from start to finish can help ease this and provide a sense of accomplishment. In terms of eco-anxiety, £140 million worth of clothes go to landfill each year in the UK alone. That is horrific. Making your own clothes or mending what you have can be helpful to these figures on an individual level. In an environment so against us, taking the time to make things for your own body is important. Mass-produced items are not meant to fill individual needs. When I make something for myself, I learn the shape of my body and what materials make it shine. Colours bring me joy, what I feel comfortable in. I can accommodate my specific needs in a way the world around me isn't prepared to.
I don't have much control over like the cut of it and stuff. I think about necklines, and even necklines be like up there. Or if I've got like, I like refuse to wear my work uniform because it's got like a super baggy neck. Oh, I can't deal with something with texture. I don't know, I really like cotton, like nylon. Having a nice gradient is really exciting because it gives you something to look forward to. Like, oh, when I get into the next colour.
At the end of the day, I want to feel comfortable and I want to feel like myself first and foremost before anything.
Celia Pym is a contemporary textile artist that works with mending. She takes items of emotional significance to people, listens to their stories, and mends them with a little bit of love woven in. She speaks of mending as responding to a problem as opposed to fixing a problem. Her aim is never to make the item look the same as before, but acknowledge the damage done to it and highlight how it has made the item different, but still beautiful. Her practice of obvious mending applies different significance to each item, but in relation to this video, I'm imagining how her work could be applied to lesbian histories. How we have been broken down, called unnatural, had acts of hate directed towards us, yet now we stand stronger than potentially ever as a global community united by love. That is the same magic Celia Pym uses when she mends. Textile art, hair, and lesbianism all have things in common. I use each as a way to show my identity and as an act of peaceful defiance. All are powerful, but when done together by a whole community, it feels possible to do anything. L.J. Roberts and Sarah Joy Ford's practices spearhead this. Art is very good at having a trickle-down cultural effect, and this is very present in this area. Through using our bodies as radical sites of art, we state every day what sort of world we want to live in.
I think your hair is quite an integral part of your identity and who you are, because I feel like when I met you, it was like one of the first things I like knew about you. Liv dyes her hair a lot and it looks really cool, and she does it all herself.
Think about how much time you spend thinking about how you want to look and compare it to the time you spend trying to look that way. What is holding you back from fulfilling that dream, from fulfilling that like insurgent need? It's fear. And a lot of times fear is a useless feeling, because while it may protect you from things, it might be protecting you from like what your mother will think, what your employer will think, what the people around you will think, your friends, your acquaintances, your colleagues. It's also making you miserable. And in order for you to improve the quality of the only life that you have, you should but dive into those wishes and let yourself express what is inside of you and let it out. Put it on your hair. Start small. You can cut a little bang. You can add a little jewelry to your eye. You can stop shaving your legs. Anything. And eventually you will be brave enough to go full throttle, and the moment you let yourself look the way you want to look, the more you'll feel like yourself. Because, and this is a really good TikTok comment I read, fashion is the manifestation of the self.
I am soft, and my knit stitches are hypnotizing. I am only dependent on myself. I am free from bodily issues and expectations. We construct our identity one loop at a time, sometimes using our needles as an act of anger, sometimes one of comfort. I make and mend myself as an act of defense.